Hey, Ron, great to have you on the show. Listen, we always do this in the beginning. Why don't you let the audience know a little bit about your background, what you're doing today?
Yeah, so currently I'm the CEO of Service Express. We're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we sell service contracts to fix high-end servers, storage, and networking gear in large corporate data centers. And so we've got 50 offices across the U.S., 500 employees, and we're about 130 million in revenue right now. And so I've been with Service Express for 22 years. I was the first manager hired in 1997. I was the 15th employee. We had 4 offices when we were under 3 million in revenue. So hired in as a sales manager and set about growing it from there, became president in 2002 and now CEO. And going back further than that, I have a teaching degree from Central Michigan University. So I have a teaching degree. I'm not a technology guy. I'm CEO of a technology company. Go figure.
So, I got a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you think back now, you've had this phenomenal growth. How has the teacher side of you contributed to that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because it turns out it was a great way to prepare me for this. And so when I got my teaching degree, I went to college. I thought I'm going to teach and coach. I love sports, and I thought I'd get a teaching degree, I'll coach, and go from there. When I graduated at 22, I didn't want to teach, and I really wanted to go into business and sales, and I had to start to figure out how to create a sales career. And 2 things happened. I think with the teaching degree, it taught me how to communicate, organize my thoughts, a lesson plan, if you will, present information. And as I got to Service Express and got in leadership positions and then took over as president, what I found, even still today, I'm teaching and coaching. It's just that the playing field is now in a conference room in our corporate environment versus on the sideline of a basketball or football field.
It's really interesting because I find that people really trip up with trying to build a strong culture because they miss a lot of that teaching component and the consistency of not only sharing knowledge, but then helping people apply it. So, what type of things are you doing in your culture where maybe that's more regular or better done than other companies?
I think what we've been able to do over the years is scale our culture, not only create a great culture, but learn how to scale it. And I'll say back to my teaching degree, I think what's led me to culture so much was because I don't have that business degree background. I don't have an MBA. I'm not a technology guy. When I took over as president in 2002, I decided, the way that I knew how to compete and win and the difference maker was going to be win with people. Build a great team, recruit, bring in talent to the team that has the same values and belief system that we have, and then create an environment where they can do their best work, they can grow professionally, personally, financially, and they can be recognized and rewarded for that. So sort of out of necessity is where I led with people, and that's what gives me energy. Like you'll find out I don't talk about what we do very much at all as far as selling service contracts. What I talk about is the people in the culture side. And so we've developed programs over the years to create this great culture. And one of those has been our performance measurement system that we call our SR5. It stands for scorecards, ROIs, and 515s. And a scorecard is departmental, company and departmental key metrics, right? Key performance indicators that we look at as a company, across department, across regions, in offices to get a view of how we're performing. The ROI is interesting. That stands for responsibilities, objectives, and indicators. That is a personal, measurable job description that everybody in the company has, including myself, that outlines what our key priorities are and what the metrics assigned with those priorities are. We fill those out monthly, and monthly, everybody in the company reports to their direct leader what their performance was. And it creates great discussion around celebration of great performance, inquiry if you're underperforming in the sense of, do we need training? Are there roadblocks in your way? What's going, was it just hey, it just wasn't a good month? What have you? And we're doing that every month.
So, can you, and I don't want you to reveal anything that's confidential, but can you pull one of those up or maybe from memory just state, if you're looking at an ROI document,
Yeah.
What's an example on, what's going to be in each pieces of that document that somebody's going to be following up on? Because this is really big for me because my weakness is systems, so I have to force myself to be systematic.
Okay.
And a lot of leaders are that way. They're kind of ADD or ADHD.
Right.
And I'm interested in this system. Can you give us a little more meat on the bone on what
Yeah.
specifically might that look like?
Yeah, if I just think about my personal ROIs, which by the way are on our company intranet, and everybody in the company can see them, and I
Yep,
can
I
see
love that.
everyone's in the company, so it's all transparent. For me, I have revenue growth where we grow double digits every year. So, and I break down, so that's a responsibility. And then objective would be our three revenue drivers, which is contract revenue, selling the service contracts. It'd be hardware revenue, which is product sales. So contracts are 88% of our revenue. Hardware sales are 11% of our revenue. And then billable services, time and materials, 3%. So those are the objectives. And then the indicator is what's the monthly goal under each revenue stream.
Okay, so
Okay.
basically, when you're looking at these each month, do you have an annual objective at the beginning of the year? I would assume, don't
We
you?
do have an annual objective, and then we break that down into
Okay.
monthly or quarterly objectives that we're measuring against. Customer service, we have net promoter score that we track on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
We track dollars lost due to competitors, dollars lost due to if there were any service issues that we have. So that would be customer service metrics. We've got margin metrics where we talk about our gross margin, our EBITDA, where we talk about labor, things in that nature. And so you can break it down based on what everybody's key responsibility is.
Okay. And so you've got responsibilities, and then what it was objectives.
Objectives, and then the indicator, which is the number, the measurable result.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, how many of these does each person have typically?
It can vary, depending on the role. It can be probably as few as 10 and probably not much more than 20. I mean, you don't want to have, if you're measuring everything,
Yeah.
you're measuring nothing, right? And so we want
Yeah.
to keep it pretty focused on what you can control and what you can impact.
Are they prioritized in any way, or are they all kind of laid out there?
They're all kind of laid out there. We sort of have business metrics towards the top, and then we'll have sort of meeting rhythms or people development metrics towards the bottom. How
Okay.
often we meet as a team, how often I meet with direct reports. We have professional development piece in there, which I'm big on. How many books, did you read or listen to this month, this quarter?
Okay. And when you have just I'm going down a lot of rabbit trails
Yeah,
here, but when you have how many books did you read? Do you also ask what did they apply? Do you track that at all?
that we don't track that. That's a conversation between leader and direct report to get into that and see what they're applying. So
Now, with the detail that you've got in the ROI document, do you find that you don't have to have a separate list of responsibilities? Or do you have, whether you call it a job description or we call them employee strategic plans, but do you not have to do that? You kind of just focus on the ROI document?
yeah, I mean, everybody has a job description, but we focus
Okay.
on the ROI document because that's what you're focused on, and that's how we measure results on a monthly basis. And this is a real interesting point because we're so number driven in the sense of looking at metrics and having this conversation, but yet we're known for having a great culture. We've been best and brightest national companies to work for like 8 years in a row. We've been on Forbes top 25 small giants list, and people go, wait a minute, I've came from environments where people were all about the numbers and we got treated as such. How can you be so much about the numbers but so much about culture? And to me, using this system allows us to create a great culture because one, as we're looking at results I mentioned earlier, people look at, say, we're tracking numbers and think we're going to beat people up on numbers, right? And it's the idea is the opposite. If you're doing the right things and you have the right people and you have the right systems in place, there's so much achievement going on. It's taking the time out to achieve and recognize performance. And that's one of the number one complaints we get when people join us that they have with previous companies was nobody cared that I was there. Nobody noticed that I was there. Nobody knew what I was doing unless I made a mistake. Here, we're recognizing and rewarding that on a consistent basis for that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And of course, I can't remember the stats offhand, but the numbers are huge on how many people leave a current company because they don't feel valued.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So that brings to a great point of what is company culture. So many people I have found in my experience get this completely messed up. They think it's I've got a ping pong table in the rec room. You can bring your pet to work. We get you dry cleaning. We have a weekly, party or potluck and do happy hour and that stuff. And look, we do all of that. Like we literally have a ping pong table in the break room. But that's not culture. That's having fun and that's taking a break and that's part of having fun. But if that's all you're doing, you're just having fun. You're not really creating a great culture. And you can't do that stuff and then ignore people or treat them poorly the rest of the time and think, well, I've got culture. Culture in our mind is that people understand the value of the work that they do at your company. They're recognized and rewarded for that value that they do, and they're allowed the freedom to do their best work. And so with the ROIs, we track with that to the scorecards and how one number impacts another. You know the value that you're bringing. You know how important you are to the company and what we're trying to achieve. You're recognized and rewarded for that. And by looking at ROIs, I don't have to sweat the small stuff. I don't care if I walk by and see ping pong, people playing ping pong, or we have another building here in our team of sales development. They're always playing hacky sack. Whenever I'm there, I don't care. You know why? One, I do care if they don't invite me to join. And they called my bluff one time, and I almost pulled a muscle.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't sweat it because I see their monthly results and how they're crushing and how they're performing. And so playing hacky sack is just taking a break from that. So you don't sweat some of the small stuff that otherwise you might. And so I think that's what goes in to creating a company culture.
Yeah, I think because you're so good on managing the numbers, the metrics, you can have that flexibility. You may have seen
Correct.
some of the articles recently. There's more and more companies trying a 4-day work week, whether
Hmm.
it's 4 10-hour days or they're just cutting back on the work week. But it really doesn't matter. Or people that say you have quote unquote unlimited vacation when you really don't, because you're not going to take unlimited vacation. If
Correct.
if they're hitting the metrics, you have some flexibility to try some different things. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious, you talked about your rhythm of meetings. So
Hmm.
talk to us about that. How often are the one-on-ones? How often are the team meetings? How often are the company meetings?
Yeah, great question. I'm a huge believer in meeting rhythms. And so every Monday at Service Express, every department will huddle. It'll be a 30 to 60-minute huddle, coined like a football huddle where you're calling the play for the week, right? So we get together, communicate anything in the business that needs communicated, communicate within the department what needs to do, hear what everybody's focus is on for the week, align resources as needed, and break. You're off and running for the week. Mine with my executive team is every Monday morning at 9 a.m., 9 to 10 a.m. standing meeting of the weekly huddle. And then from there, I have a weekly strategy meeting between 60 and 90 minutes with each of my direct reports. And they're locked in. I've got on Friday, I've got my chief marketing officer and my chief revenue officer back to back. They sit right next to each other. I go to their building. It's every Friday. On Mondays, I've got my chief human resource officer. I've got my vice president of finance, and I've got my chief operating officer. They're locked in. Now I track these on ROIs, and so our goal for the month is 3 meetings. But I lock in every week because I know like travel may come in and we'll have to cancel one. Schedules will get turned, and by average we should connect 3 times a week. But I don't wait week by week to try to find time for them, or you never find time. They're
That's right.
locked in. Everything else
Yeah.
is scheduled around these meetings. And
Yeah.
then monthly, I have my team meeting. So I have an executive leadership meeting from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. every month. After the month is closed, the financials come out and we review. So it's usually the end of the second week of the month. And those are already scheduled through the entire year. And so every leader has a similar type of format with the huddle, the strategy meeting, and then the monthly departmental meeting.
Yeah. And talk to me about the strategy meeting a little bit. How does that differ? Is that kind of the same thing as the huddle, the same format, but it's just longer? You're one-on-one, you're diving a little bit deeper on per issue, per project, per client, whatever, or
Yeah, I'm diving into each business unit. So, for me with my chief human resource officer, we're diving in there. So the first 15 to 20 minutes are tactical items. Just give me updates on things I need to know that are going on. If I've got a couple of tactical updates or items I want to connect with you on, boom, we handle those. And then we get into strategy, which is more not what's happening today or this week, but what are the initiatives that we set out to focus on for this year? How are we tracking towards those? Are there any pivots that we need to do? Are there any roadblocks that I can remove for you? Right? What are we working on? And then what's the 3 to 5 year sort of outlook look like for human resources? And then what are we doing towards that? And we get into this weekly rhythm. So what this does is, if I have a thought or an idea or an update, I'm not going to interrupt you with an email or a phone call with a voicemail or a
Yeah.
text or barge in your office. If it's not urgent, I know I got you every Monday. I just put it on my list and I pull up and I do that, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps
Yeah.
open communication on a rhythm where we're constantly working on it. We're a growing company, growing 15-20% every year. So things ebb and flow and change and pivot, and we want to have that consistent communication. So that's what I do with every one of my direct reports.
Yeah, and I find that that's really a new habit for a lot of people as far as the not interrupting. So when you
Yes.
have that recurring meeting, whether
Yeah.
it's you as the boss, so many bosses will interrupt their people constantly. I thought of this or what's this, and if
Yeah.
it's not urgent, if you should put it on your list for that weekly meeting. And it's also a new learning thing for your manager or the employee. If you're a manager, you just got staff to also learn that and to trust that builds great bond between the two of you. I think that's great. But one of the things that strikes me that I don't hear often, as a matter of fact, on this podcast, probably the first time we've heard it, is what you're talking about is that a major part of the meeting, not a sliver, is focused on strategy.
Correct.
It's focused basically on it. If you've seen the book, The One Thing,
Hmm.
it's what are we working on that's not only impacting currently, but what are we working on that's really going to make a big difference? You mentioned today or this year. You mentioned 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's really totally different than what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah. So at my level with my executive team, I mean that's the stuff that we need to be working on. We need to be we use the phrase working on the business, not in the business as much. We lean into the business so we know what's happening. That's why we handle that at the beginning,
Yeah.
right? But then we want to pull out and work on the business. And we really this really came from from Michael Gerber who wrote the E-Myth. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yeah. Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he talks about is working on the business, not in the business, and spending time doing that. And so we have a BHAG, Jim Collins. I do a lot of reading, so I'm going to quote a lot of these authors. I R&D all of it, which is rip off and duplicate, and I take it and make it our own. And so our BHAG, big hairy audacious goal, is 500 million in revenue at the end of 2025, right? And so that's our point that forces us to look up and look out and see where we want to go, and that forces us to see where we're at now and what do we need to do today, this year, the next 3 to 5 years to be prepared. What systems and processes or things that we're doing will not last to 500 million? Will they last to 250 million? Okay, perfect. So that means we've got about a year and a half to adjust that, fix it, or get to scale to 500. And we want to be talking about that now, not when we're 230 million about to hit and go like, oh no, this is about to break, right? And so that's the power of having a big, hairy, audacious goal that forces you to look out and forces you to always be working on your business and always taking stock of where you're at, where you're going, and how long can you get by doing it the way you're doing now. And frankly, I
Right.
just had this conversation. If we're not looking back about every 3 years at our business and going, oh my word, how did we even run the business back then with the way we're doing it? We're not evolving at the pace we need to evolve.
Yeah, but I would actually disagree with you. It's actually a way of agreeing with you and disagreeing.
Okay.
I don't think setting the BHAG forces people to work on the business. And I think that's a big problem. You obviously have done it. That's why
Yeah.
you're seeing the growth. And you've got the systems in place where you're making it happen. I mean, if more companies did this, where they just didn't set the BHAG and then they got busy with
Right.
firefighting
Yeah.
all day long, but by you going back to it every week and making a major portion of the meeting of how we're going to get there, I mean, that's a huge difference. I heard a speaker recently, a guy I know, he was talking about a movement he's driving. And he said, okay, what we want to see happen is we want to see 300,000 people in our area join this movement.
Hmm.
And he said, do you realize what that means?
Right.
Is that we need 60,000 mentors to help this 300,000 people get to where they want to go when they join this movement.
Hmm.
That's one mentor for every 5 people. We may not have a mentor that can take on 5 people. Maybe they can only take on one or two. But if we say one for every five, so how are we going to get 60,000 mentors? And when you focus on your strategy the way you're doing, that's got to be amazing fuel for your growth and amazing bonding thing for your culture, because you've got people really not only thinking about today, but they're like, oh yeah, I can see how I play into this
That's right.
in the future.
That's right. It's vision casting. That's exactly what it's
Yeah.
vision casting, and then breaking it down. And that's part, our core value as a company is to help our people achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals. That's the foundation of everything we do, which is everything's built around our people. With the theory that if we surround ourselves with the right people who share our beliefs and value systems, and we figure out what they want to achieve, and we help them through Service Express actually achieve those goals, our goals will be blown out of the water. And so when you talk about culture in a BHAG of 500 million, now 500 million is not motivating in and of itself. Like, why do I want to be part of a bigger company just to be part of a bigger company? And I talk about this openly with everybody in their organization. Everyone can quote that BHAG. I said it's not the number, it's the opportunities that make up that number. It's the careers created, people that don't work here yet that we hire. It's the careers made that who are you that are here, what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And by growing at that rate will allow us to help you personally, professionally, and financially. I want you to have the work-life balance, integration, whatever you want to say, everything that you want because of Service Express. I want you to be in your career, whether you want to advance or whether you want to stay in your role and just keep crushing it. I want you to do what brings you energy and where you're happiest at. And financially, I want you to make more money here than you've ever made because you're providing that value and you're worth it. And I can demonstrate that by your ROIs. If I accomplish those three things with every employee, that's how we get to that number. So we tie it all in together, and that is where the juice is. That's where the excitement comes out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, now let me throw you a curveball.
Yeah,
So all this is on, hey, we're pumping out growth, we're making this thing happen, we're hiring people that fit. So we're making, okay, let me throw you a curveball. So
yeah.
one of the managers in your organization, not you at your level, one of the managers in your organization, they've got the ROI and they meet with an employee, maybe it's the first meeting, maybe it's, two or three down the road, and that person's not hitting it.
Hmm.
How does that conversation go?
Yeah, the conversation would first look at the story behind the numbers. So, as much as we look at numbers, that's the beginning, and we don't make a decision or judgment just based on the number. So, now let's look behind the numbers. Why are we not hitting that number? Is it we need more training for the employee, right? Is it that there's a roadblock? Are we doing something as a company systematically that has some barriers in your way that are really making it difficult to help for you to achieve that number? Or is it poor performance or lack of work ethic, not showing up? It could be that we have that happen here, right? And we need to figure out what it is, and we need to address it. Is it training? Let's get you the training that you need. Are we doing something stupid? Let's fix it. As a leader, let me remove that roadblock. What's in your way? I'm the road grader. Like, let me get that out of the way so you can perform. Or is it performance? Let's talk about that, and why, and make those adjustments. And then let's go to work on it. We'll talk next month. We'll look at it again, and we'll start to track it. And are we making progress? Making progress. We're patient all the time. Like, keep working and making that progress. Are we not? Is it the same conversation every year? And there are conversations that you kind of either got to get coached up or coached out. And what happens though is when we get to that point, I am big on no surprises. If employee's surprised by anything, then we haven't done our job as a leader having those conversations with them. And typically, if we get to the end, most times the employee will approach us and be like, I found another opportunity. I think it's better fit for me. I'm going to take that. And we say, I get it. Sounds great. Great luck. Wish you nothing but the best. Sometimes we have to coach them out and direct that conversation ourselves. But oftentimes when we do it right, the employee will say, "Yep, I get it. I know it. We've had it." So we give a lot of time to improve performance, but you do have to improve it.
How
And at
much
the
time?
point, I mean, it varies on the effort. Honestly, a lot of it varies on the
Yeah.
effort and the progress. If you're putting in the effort and making progress and giving me everything you got, I'm a lot more patient. If you're not putting in the effort and you have I don't care attitude and you're not showing up, then the patience, it's much shorter than that. So
Yeah, and just to pick up on, I'm not sure I follow. So these meetings that are happening between the manager and the employee,
mhm.
they happen on a weekly basis, right?
Well, strategy meetings will be communicating every week. The ROI review is monthly.
Okay. But the strategy meetings, they touch on the key pieces of the ROI when you're talking about the tactical stuff and how they're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, that'll be
It's
wrapped
just
into it.
shorter. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
because
of,
we're touching base on performance, what you have going on this week, or
yeah.
it's not a necessarily a review of the ROI, but we're talking about the action items or the things that you're supposed to be doing that are going to lead into ROI performance because we're running the business at that point together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. No, I think that all sounds really solid. Now, I want to take you back something I read you haven't brought up here, but early in your career you kind of, tried the teaching gig. You realized you wanted more control over your future and some other
Yeah,
reasons, but
yeah,
what was it? You had a buddy, like, you lived in Michigan, but you had
yeah,
a buddy who was taking off for Tennessee.
yeah,
And how old were you? And you're all of a sudden like, yeah, okay, I'll kind of pack the car and go.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Yeah, so I came out of college, decided I went for one teaching job. It was where I did my student teaching. I had recommendations from the principal, the teachers, and the Board of Education in that school district voted not to approve the hiring of that position. They just replaced it internally. Different teachers kind of picked up an extra hour. However, they worked it out. And that just was the final straw. I was like, gosh, I had no control over that. I didn't really even get to interview for it. And so that's not the type of system that I want to be in. I want much more control. So I'm gonna I'm gonna figure out a sales career. In my first job, college degree, post college was selling health club memberships for $6 an hour plus a little bit of commission. And I did that for a year. Then I got my real estate license, sold a house, and then realized, what am I doing on nights and weekends sitting in these strangers' houses when I'd rather be out hanging with my buddies? So didn't do that. I probably should put a little bit more research into these positions looking back, but I tend to just go by action. And so started selling long distance services, which was a brutal sale, face to face cold calling in business parks, getting you to switch your long distance service from your provider to our provider, all in one sale. 7 steps to the sale, all in 1 hour meeting. It was brutal. But it was boot camp for sales, and I learned so much about sales. That 7 steps to the sales I actually brought to Service Express a few years later, and just it took a few meetings to get there, and it was more professional. But I had that break, and you develop thick skin through that. And so I was there for almost a year. I was 25, so I was 24. Not married, no serious girlfriend kind of thing. Just going, what's my next move? And one of my best friends from high school, Danny, he did everything the opposite of me. He had an internship through college, got a job before he even graduated college with Saturn Corporation, which had just built a plant in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which was an hour south of Nashville. And so I called Danny up. So when are you going down there to look for apartments? And he was going over Thanksgiving. This was 1993. And I said, man, maybe I'll go with you. And he knows me. So he's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, let's just go on. So we drive down, we drive through Nashville. I'd never been down there, so I didn't know what to think. And I'm like, big city, big buildings. We go to Franklin, which is 20 minutes south of Nashville, nice small town. And I'm like, oh man, I can get a job down here. And so Danny, let's look for 2-bedroom apartments. I'll come down. And he's like, you don't have a job. I'm like, details. Let's not worry about that right now. So we found, geez, I had to cold call on apartments because we were there on the weekend, and it was Thanksgiving weekend. Some, like the people working there, weren't even working. So I'd go knock on a door and be like, I know this sounds weird. We're not crazy. We're scouting out the area. I just want to kind of talk to you about your apartment. And through that, we found a 2-bedroom apartment. I signed a lease, came home. Remember calling my mom. She's like, you're moving, aren't you? And I said, I am. And so I put in my notice just before Christmas, and it was actually on my 25th birthday, December 27th. 1993. I had my belongings in my car and drove down to Nashville with Danny. We kind of had fun for that week between Christmas and New Year's. The couple days after New Year's, he went to work. I got up and got the paper with the want ads. That's how we did it. And 2.5 days later, I had a job at contract sales managers with Tina Mayberry, my sales manager and one of my lifetime mentors now. And yeah, I did that for 3 years until I moved back and took Service Express.
So you said Tina is a lifetime mentor. Do you still stay in touch with her now?
I do. I do. Not as often as we used to, but yeah, a couple times a year we stay connected.
And when you think back on a moment that really was impactful for you with her,
Hmm.
that kind of possibly contributed to you developing this relationships first type of approach, what comes to mind?
Our weekly strategy meetings, they would be on Monday mornings, and Tina would come and sit in my office and with a cup of coffee. And the first thing she always led off, and I'll do a horrible Southern accent, but I can't, and she knows this, I can't talk about Tina without trying to imitate her Southern accent. And and she makes fun of my Northern accent. And but she'd be like, "So, Ron, tell me about your weekend. What'd you do? Where'd you see? Where'd you go? How's Danny doing?" And she would just invest in me for 15 minutes or so, catching up. And then she'd make suggestions. Have you been here? Have you been there? And we did that for 3 years. And she really showed she cared about me, the person, first. And then we'd get into the business stuff. I carry that with me today and try to start every meeting with personal catch up, and not just, okay, you're here, let's start hammering out business stuff.
So two things are really striking me. One thing is this personal side thing. So you're a
Hmm.
driver, an athlete, coach, and so a lot of people are like that. Jump in, and it's just kind of very direct.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Forget the personal side. We don't start slow. That's one piece. The other
Hmm.
piece that strikes me from what you said, if I understood you correctly, part of this also is you're an action guy. You'd rather do something rather than nothing.
Yes.
And sometimes that means that your natural habits would not be to consider the details, all of the details. Yet
Correct.
now you've built an organization that's all focused around a set of metrics. It's all focused on systematic meetings and the way you work together.
Hmm.
That's incredibly systematic. I mean, you and I seem to have some similarity there
Yeah.
where we force ourselves to look at the details. So I don't know, you want to give anybody a little bit more insight into either of those areas because those are two areas that a lot of leaders struggle with.
Yeah, I think what Tina modeled to me first off was the "I care about you" conversation. And I think John Maxwell has a great quote: "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." And I made that mistake early on at Service Express where I was hard charging, all business. I didn't put the people first. I let the numbers of the business get ahead of my caring about you. And we didn't have a great culture. And I had turnover on my team, and the results weren't there. And I was struggling and I was frustrated, and I knew something had to change. It took a hard look in the mirror to say, my word, I would not want to work for me. You know,
So talk to me about that hard look in the mirror. Did somebody
yeah.
else help you with that? Because
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
something you
So another
read or
mentor, Mike McCullough, who hired me here at Service Express,
okay?
helped me along that. I saw it, I felt it, I recognized it. He helped point it out to me as well, and was like, I'm pushing too hard, and I'm not caring about anybody, and I'm just moving fast. I'm running people over, and the results are showing that, right. And so running into that challenge. So it was a combination of effects that really got to me, and really kind of had a seminal moment in my career here at Service Express where I was just frustrated around it. And I called a meeting with Mike and two other, my now chief operating officer, my former CFO, and just said, I can't do it this way anymore. I'm not the leader I want to be. I don't think I'm the friend I want to be, the husband I want to be right now. Like the stress of trying to grow this is sort of weighing on me, and we were not growing at the rate we wanted to. It was right after Y2K that impacted our business because people upgraded their servers for be Y2K compliant, and we didn't really understand the metrics of our business fully at that time. So that was one of 2 years we didn't grow double digits. We only grew 9%. And so the weight of all that, and I was putting it on myself. It was me.
Yeah,
And I just
yeah.
said, I can't do this anymore. And so I said, I quit. And it was, I'm not leaving the company, but I quit doing it this way. And I'm not sure, this was a big point in my career, if I was the right person to really continue to scale Service Express. So I said, sometimes I think I am, and everybody's in trouble if I leave, and sometimes I think I'm not, and I should move out of the way. And I'm willing to move out of the way if I'm not the right person. So I said, what we need to do, because I think everybody had the same questions, was we need to interview for my replacement. Like, we need to, let's replace me. And when we do, I'll stay on and transition whatever I can, and I'll get out of the way. But we have to do this. And Mike, what was great, and he said, first of all, you're a Service Express person. We don't want you to go. We have some challenges right now, and yeah, let's do that. Let's start interviewing people. So we agreed on that. Left the meeting. Mike was great. He circled back up again and said, I want you to stop listening to anybody else in the company, anywhere else. I hired you because I believed in you as a leader. I want you to go be the leader that I know that you are and I know you can be, and just don't listen to anybody else. Just, you got nothing to lose at this point. Go do that. And I said I would, and we ended up running and looking for vice presidents of sales and interviewed people. And I mean, we were serious to hire somebody. What we found out, that was in the fall. We did that through the last quarter. So here's what happened. Two things. One, put people first, went back to being the leader Tina demonstrated to me, the leader I wanted to be, started engaging and developing relationships, not only with people on my team, but other people. Sales took off. We had a record fourth quarter while I was doing that. Amazing. I just decompressed everything. And what we found is we were interviewing people. People were talking about the same type of culture that we weren't doing, but we knew that's what we wanted to do and what was in our heart to do. And so we got it reaffirmed through that process. And New Year's Eve of that year, I think this was 2020. Now it was after Y2K, or not 2020. It was 2000.
Yeah.
Everyone left the office. I was still here, kind of finishing up some stuff. Mike came in my office. We were talking and just said, well, I think we're not going to hire somebody, and I think we got it figured out now, and let's go forward with this. And I said, yeah, I'm all in. I said, thanks for sticking by me, man. You could have just got rid of me. It would have just been easy and deserved. And he said, no problem. Thanks for not leaving me. You could have left, and it would have been easy. And man, from that moment on, 28% growth the next year, up and to the right, focusing on people first, culture, everything. I think just sort of, you know, just flipped at that seminal sort of time in our life here at Service Express.
Awesome. So you brought up people that you talk to in the work environment. So what about the other voices in your life? What about close friends, spouse? What was how was that going at that time when you had that self-doubt? Am I the leader? Should I stay? You mentioned, it's putting pressure on all areas of your life. What was happening on the people who kind of support you on the personal side? And I don't want to cross any boundaries. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
wanted to say, whatever, that's fine. But I'm
yeah.
wondering if there's something there that would help people.
I kept it pretty private. It's maybe part of the problem that I was just internalizing and just owning and wearing everything. I think probably contributed to it. So I didn't really, kind of uh, confess or be vulnerable with other people at that time. My wife knew I was under stress. With what was going on at work. Just on a quick personal anecdote, we have three beautiful, amazing kids now, but at that time, it was a challenge for us to get our family started, right? And so it didn't come easy for us. We were one of those couples that it was a challenge. So that was building up frustration. So that on the personal side was also, sort of contributing to all this as well. And I just wore it probably more looking back today, more than I should have at that time.
Yeah, yeah. And now I also I think I saw something somewhere that I was reading about you where and you've just expressed this candidly, and I appreciate it for the audience.
Hmm.
The self doubt you had. I mean, most hard
Hmm.
charging people like you, it'd be like they keep charging,
Hmm.
or they'd say, "Oh, this company's all messed up," and they'd blame the company and they'd go for a walk.
Yeah.
Um, how have you dealt with self doubt? Over your career, and found a system where you can manage that, because everybody's got it,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
innate in all of us, where there's that the negativity committee in our brain that says you're not good enough, you won't
Yeah.
do this, whatever. What do
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking about this recently because I heard it, I think, on a Joe Rogan podcast, talking about the imposter syndrome of, do I really belong, here, entertainers, or high achieving people, CEOs, like, do I really belong? And my joke, having a teaching degree and being where I'm at, I even joke with my dad. I still like to say, like, I still got them fooled. They haven't caught on that I really don't know what I'm doing here in that sense. When it comes to self-doubt, I think two things. One, looking back at a track record that's been built up now over a period of years, you start to gain confidence that as you approach challenges, inflection points, plateaus, that you can figure it out. Like, you've got the background and you've done it enough in your career. The other thing is really surrounding yourself with an amazing team. I have an amazing, not only executive team, but next level leadership team, employees in Service Express. I don't have to put it all on myself anymore. Going back to how I didn't handle things correctly early on, I've got a great team that will help me. And Mike, my mentor, Mike, helped me with this. He would say, you need to share what's going on with your teams and people around you. And I was afraid to show the struggle, because I thought, man, they're going to get scared and leave. And they're going to get afraid that I don't have it all together. I don't have every answer, that there are challenges and problems. They're going to leave. And he said, man, if they leave, they're the wrong people on your team. And I think what you're going to find is they're going to help you and they're going to rally around you. And when I finally opened up, that was something learned. That was to make myself vulnerable, to say, I don't know. We're not performing here. I need help. That's exactly what happened. The right people just came around and rallied and started throwing out solutions and, let me help here and I can do this. And, the wrong people, they segmented themselves out and we brought in more of the right people that would help us. And I think we fostered that through the whole company today. And I think that's one of the number one mistakes I see leaders make, which is they try to make every decision themselves and try to have all the answers. And I tell them now, like, I'm CEO. By title, I can make any decision I want in this company. I literally can probably do anything I want, right? By title. But that would be the dumbest move and it would hurt the company. And I don't have all the right decisions. And so I vet my thoughts and my decisions off of my key people that I'm around with. Now I don't lead by committee. I don't vote and it has to be unanimous. I listen to everybody. And then my job at the leader is then to discern that information and make a call, right? One way or the other. And if it goes wrong, own it. If it goes right, give everybody else the credit. And I
Yep.
see leaders, newer leaders especially, biggest mistakes is they make a decision. I say, who else did you vet this off of, talk to? Where was your team? Like, I can't find anybody. I'm like, you don't have to have all the answers. That's not what I'm looking for from you. That's not a strength here at Service Express. And you learn that the hard way.
Yeah, yeah, and the I can't find anybody. That's
Yeah.
just not true. So,
Yeah.
that's a great place for us to end, because I know you got a tight time frame here. We had a good podcast. I could keep going talking to you for another hour or two. It's easy. But any closing thoughts? Also, by the way, Ron, anything you want to pass along to people about whether they want to get a hold of you or learn more about what you've learned there, your teachings, whatever?
Yeah, I think, first, closing thoughts, I touched on it earlier, but really is the bedrock of everything we do, which is that helping people achieve personal, professional, and financial goals. We literally have people write down their goals in those categories. They're stored privately on our internet for them. And twice a year, they have what we call a vision talk with their leader where they share their goals. And so we're learning what's important to you. How can I help? And how do we try to get you prepared for whatever opportunity or work-life balance that you're looking for? And so that's been powerful. That's the Zig Ziglar quote come to life of, you can get everything you want out of life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And by doing that, we've been able to really scale with that in our meeting rhythms and ROIs. We've been able to scale the I care about you conversation. And looking back at leaders who have not been successful at Service Express, about 100%, it hasn't been because of ability. It's because they've skipped over this step. They don't do this. They only drive the numbers, they try to drive numbers instead of engage people. And so that's when I just wanted to circle back and talk about how important that is as a foundation to everything that I do. So, and everything that we do here at Service Express. As far as contacting me, I actually have a blog. We release it every Thursday. It's video blogs where I just share my thoughts on different topics as they come up as I'm running the business or out, in my life. Today, I just recorded one around consistency of action that I read about on Twitter right before I worked out. So, anyways, it's ronelvesteffer.com. You can access it directly or through our website, serviceexpress.com, where you can learn more about our business and services as well. And of course, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the key places.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. And I mean sincerely, thank you for what you're doing with your team. This is what we need to have in this country and people internationally also, but I'm a little biased towards America.
Sure.
That if we had more companies where you could come to work and have a connection with meaningful work, feel personally fulfilled, feel that people care about you, we'd be an incredible nation. And we're pretty good right now, but I'd love to
Well,
see
thank
us
you
get
for
to
saying that.
incredible.
I enjoyed the conversation. I'm passionate about it, as hopefully you picked up on and or listens to this will. It's not people or profits, it's people, and they'll drive the results and everything that you want if you engage with the people. And I love to connect with like-minded people and have what I call like a jam session, like musicians do when they're jamming instruments, to jam around culture and people and in business. This is super fun to me. So thank you for having me.
Been a pleasure, Ron. You have a great week.
Thanks, you too.